And it really has sparked this new wave of open in modern life. And it brought in this Web 2.0 where we have Ajax and REST. It's really exciting and helped move the web forward. So that was one open source story, but there are so many others. I'm sure all of you are part of a project that has a really cool story, but just how people came together and built something better. So we're gonna look at that story again and really look at how a legal mechanism really enabled collective action that improved innovation. And all this was reproduced through reusable structures. So we're gonna look at the legal mechanism, the collective action, and the reusable structures. So going back, so when Netscape released its source code, there was that legal mechanism there. So Mitchell Baker actually wrote MPL 1.0, the Mozilla Public License, to enable that code to be released for anyone to use, remix, and distribute. And that license shifted power because it protected the user rights, which made it possible for the public to use and help shape that code. So this legal mechanism was needed to sort of enable something better to happen. And that next thing was that collective action. Remember all those names that were part of building Firefox. And a big reason why they were all there, apart from just that license existing, was because of how they were working. They were working open. And I love this definition from the Mozilla Wiki that says that working open is public and participatory. This requires structuring efforts that outsiders can meaningfully participate and become insiders as appropriate. So this was able to shift power by allowing for co-creation and collective action. So it gave power to the people again. And then that third piece I talked about with that reusable structures, like we saw so many other projects really succeed with open source. And a lot of that's because of groups like the Free Software Foundation, the Open Source Initiative, and even Creative Commons. They've really vetted and standardized open licenses to make it easy to start an open project today. So the shifting power aspect here is that these structures enabled anyone to start a project. And so 20 years ago, if I want to start an open source project, I definitely need a lawyer with me to write that license. But today, it's just a drop-down box in a new GitHub repo. So yeah, just to review, there was that legal mechanism that enabled the collective action that improved innovation. Right? And this is all reproduced through reproducible structures or reusable structures. And now I want to think about what we can learn from that today, or what we are doing today in terms of AI and these lessons. So I'm going to talk about two different things. The first is data stewardship, which is really thinking through a new type of legal mechanism and seeing what that unlocks. And then also participatory ML, which utilizes some of the mechanisms we already have, but how can we really implement working open in machine learning and AI? So that first one was data stewardship. Do we need a new legal mechanism today, or should we explore a new legal mechanism today? And 20 years ago, looking at the web and seeing that monopoly Internet Explorer had, you can see why a browser was built. But if you look around the web today, you see these 8 companies that have enormous power over the internet. And most internet users are in contact with at least one of these daily. And each of them have so many different products and services, it's a little unclear what their main source of revenue is, or how a company profits. And a lot of them do profit through the surveillance economy, where they're offering a free service, but then using our data to really build their ML tools and AI systems that really make them even stronger. So they're capitalizing on the data that we provide. So there's this new thinking around alternative data governance approaches. How can we be managing data in a way that gives power back to the people? So this is a pretty nascent field. And I know there's a lot on this slide. But in the alternative data governance approaches, there's a few that you might see that are a bit bigger. There's data commons, data cooperatives, data trusts. Today, I'm just going to talk about data trusts as one possibility. And I'll acknowledge there's a lot of sub-data trusts that could happen. But for a data trust, this is, you can see my little diagram on the right that I try to explain data trust. The data trust is a legal mechanism that's meant to be an independent intermediary between data subjects, so the people creating the data, and the data collectors. So these are the companies collecting the data. And the data trust is loyal to its members, and it's really acting in service to the members. But then it negotiates its data use with the companies according to the terms set by the trust. So the example I've heard is like maybe instead of logging into Facebook or Google, you log in using your data trust. That way, whenever you share any data, it goes to your data trust first. And then your trust will negotiate with Google or Facebook how that will be used before they're able to capitalize that. So an example there, it's from the UK Biobank. So that's a charitable company with trustees, and it's managing genetic data from 500,000 people. So these patients have donated their data, and they're really putting their trust in those trustees to act on their behalf with that data. And then the trustees negotiate with the researchers trying to learn information from that. And it's worked out pretty well for them. So if we go back to those lessons, I put them there on the left-hand side. This is a new legal mechanism that really allows that collective action. So the more people that are part of this data trust and put their data as the data subjects, it gives the data trust more leverage to negotiate with the data collectors. But right now, it's not quite reusable yet. If I wanted to set up a data trust today, I would definitely need a lawyer with me. Like I couldn't do this on my own. It's not a drop down like it is with a license. But that is something that they're working towards, getting this to be more reusable so that other people can really take advantage of this. So yeah, that's data stewardship. And the last thing I want to go through is participatory ML. So how can we apply working open today to different parts of machine learning? And I think we already have different ways to allow people to use our code and participate with open licenses. But how can we really invite them or share power with them? So I do want to talk about working open as a way to shift power. I know with open source, it's great that so many of you are doing open source already, but I do want to encourage you to think about this as a way you can sort of change the power landscape. I know I already read this description, but I do love it. It's that working open is public and participatory. This requires structuring effort so that outsiders can meaningfully participate and become insiders as appropriate. And by inviting those who are traditionally excluded from shaping tech to be insiders, working open can shift power. Working open does not shift power if you only include those who already have power. So like in the Genderify example, not to throw them under the bus, I'm sure they had good intentions, but maybe like having more women help build this tool. A few people might have raised a red flag saying that like, well, why are you assuming that doctors are all men? This is really damaging to women down the road. Right, and I'll say it is much harder to include people who are traditionally excluded from shaping tech. I know women isn't the biggest example, but it's much harder to invite someone who like doesn't have a computer science degree or maybe doesn't communicate like you. So are there people who the tools you're building will affect down the road that you can maybe invite them in? And there's different ways to do that. I'll just do a quick overview. I'm not going to go through all of these. But I do teach these open source practices as community interactions. These are 5 different ways you can interact with your community. But I do want to frame them as like different ways you can shift power. So there's gifting. You can give away whatever tools or technology you're building. If there's a group that you think would really benefit from this or who should have it but doesn't now, gifting is a great way to shift power. The second group is listening. So how can you listen to people as you're building this? Can you get in consultants? Can you solicit ideas? Or even learning through use? It's a more passive way of listening. Can you listen to the people who are already using your technology and see what you can do to improve? And then the third bucket there is collaborating, which is that classic open source way of working. But there's both creating together. Can you co-create with people who are a bit different from you or who may not have been part of building tech in the past? Or can you partner with other groups who have similar interests, and can you work together and help each other succeed? Right, so I do work at Mozilla. Our mission is to ensure the internet is a global public resource, open and accessible to all. And like 20 years ago, with this mission, that meant building Firefox. And today, I do think this means exploring things like data stewardship, around building more trustworthy AI, and around working open. So a couple ways we're doing that. I do work on Mossfest, like Nancy said at the beginning. So our big taglines: come with an idea, lead with a community. We are scheduled to be meeting in March 2021 in Amsterdam, but also virtually. So if you're at all excited by this topic, this is a great place to meet other people who are doing this and sort of collaborate with them. But then also, I just launched these Trustworthy AI building Trustworthy AI working group, AIB working group. We're testing out this new structure to be meeting leading up to Mossfest. So if you're interested in exploring how we can help shift industry or build more trustworthy AI, I just announced this working group. You can find it on the URL below. I'd love to have you there and just hear your ideas and also work with you to help developers build more trustworthy AI. And then finally, I know we're close to end of time. There's this request for comment out. Mozilla did write a white paper on trustworthy AI and sort of what we mean by that. And in true Mozilla fashion, we released it at 0.9. So it's not quite done yet, but we do want to hear your thoughts. We realize this is a big mission and we can't do it alone. So we want to hear from you. Where are you doing this work? Where can we work with you on this? And are we doing the right thing? So check out the white paper and yeah, leave your comments. So huge thanks. Many people helped me with this. If your name's here, I truly appreciate you. And yeah, just thank you. I'm sorry I'm not there to answer your questions in person, but if there's something I can't get to, feel free to tweet me at abicabs. I think that's a good way to get any questions to me.
Cool, thank you, Abby. I think we have time for just one questions, perhaps. If there are anybody on the here who would like to ask a question. 有没有人在现场就是想要发问的？我们应该有一个问题的时间。那如果现场大家没有要发问的话，就是有什么问题可以就是直接 Twitter 发给 Abby， 那 Abby Krebs， 那Mozilla 跟Mossfest 跟 Trustworthy AI 有关的其他的更多的资讯，我们会在Mozilla 的Facebook 跟 Twitter 都会陆续的就是跟大家分享。如果大家有兴趣参与 Mossfest 跟Trustworthy AI 的一些相关的讨论，也可以就是来参加我们的社群，来追踪我们社群的讯息，然后跟我们一起就是参与整个规划这样子。Okay, Abby, thank you, and I think it's okay for now.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye.